Hi guys, so in this video we are going to add the invader types. In the original game we have three different types of invaders. They have different scores, which we'll add later, and basically we have like these two bottom rows have one type of invader, we're gonna call it invader type number one. These two other rows have another type, and the last one have another type. And right now we only have a sprite with all the costumes for all the invaders, so we need to add code to change the sprites, the images, the costumes actually, to change the costumes that the sprite is using according to the row index. And we already have a variable that allows us to do it, to identify the row where we are at when we are creating the invader, which is the row index variable. So coming back here, just like we did with the columns, our rows are going to be numbered in a way. So this is going to be number one, this should be number two, number three, number four. Okay, let me just change this. Okay, so these are the row index of each one of the rows that we have in the game. And basically what we have is that the first two rows, I mean row numbers, row index 0 and row index 1 have the first type of invader. Then rows 2 and 3 have invader type number 2. And row number 4 has invader type number 3. So, first of all, the first thing that we need is a variable to identify and the invader type that we want for that clone, because we are going to need that variable so that we can change the costumes according to the invader type. So we need to store the invader type somewhere so that when we are using the assigning the costumes, we can say which costume we want to use for that clone. So the first thing we are going to do is to create an invader type variable. So let's make a variable for this sprite only. Once again, this is a variable only for this sprite. We won't use it anywhere else. And let's call it invader type. Okay, so we have the invader type. I'm going to hide it. And now what we are going to do is to initialize the variable here with the invader type equals to 1. So what we'll do is that we have three types of invaders: invader type number 1, number 2, and number 3. What we are doing here is that by default, all invaders are number 1, which is exactly what we have right now. They are all using the costume of the first type of invader. Invader type number 1. And now what we need to do is update this value. So update the invader type according to the row index that we are using. And basically the row index starts at 0 at this block. And then when we are repeating, every time we finish repeating an entire row, every time we finish repeating the 11 invaders of the row, we increment the row index by 1, which we are doing right here. And so it's after incrementing the row index that we need to update the invader type. And so we know that by default we are going to be using the invader type number 1. And so what we will do is that if the row index is equal to 2 or 3, then the invader type will set the invader type to 2. And if the row index is equal to 4, we'll set the invader type to 3. So we already know how to do the condition. So we have if, and we can do it here. And so we have if invader type, right? We have to use an OR condition. And an OR condition, why? Because we are going to say if invader type is equal to, if row index is equal to 2 or to 3, then we change the invader type. And so, sorry, okay, here. So if invader type, once again, sorry, if row index equals to number 2 or I'm going to duplicate this or equals to number 3. So we are saying that if the row index is this one or this one, then the invader type will be equals to 2. So this is the second type of invader. And now we can add another condition. I'm going going to put it right here. So this is running. Okay. Now we don't need an OR because it's just one row. So if row index equals to 3, then the invader type is equal to, if row index is equal to 4, then the invader type is equal to 3. And so right now, we are not using the invader type to do anything yet, but right now, when we are creating the clone, and so when the clone here is created, the invader type will be set to the correct value. And now we can use the invader type here to change the costume that that clone is going to use. So here we can switch. Right now we are applying or assigning the costumes for the invader type number 1. So we are going to use that variable so we can change this. And in what way are we going to change it? So let me just show you. So basically we have, I'm going to copy this. These are the invader types. So we have invader type number 1, we have the invader type number 2, and we have the invader type number 3. And now we need to see what costumes each invader type is going to use. So if we come to the costumes, we know that invader type is going to use, by default, we'll deal with animation in just a bit, but by default, the invader type number 1 uses the costume number 1. So I'm going to put this here. Change the color so that, okay. Yep. Now, invader type number 2 uses the costume number 3. So number 3, and invader type number 3 uses the costume number 5. So we can change this. Now what we need is a way to use the invader type to get the value that we need, the costume number that we need. So we know that when it's 1, it's 1, when it's 2, it's 3, and when it's 3, it's 5. So we need a way to make the relationship between these two values so that here we can set the correct costume for the invader to start with. So we can already change this. So switch costume 2, and now switch costume 2, we're going to have to do an operation here so we can use the invader type. So we could put the invader type here, but then it will always change to the number of the costume, which won't be correct because it will be using this costume, this one, or this one. So now we need to do an operation with this. And the way to get from these values to these ones is to duplicate this value minus 1. So if we get 1 times 2, 2 minus 1 is 1. 2 times 2, 4, minus 1 is 3, and 3 times 2, 6, minus 1 is 5. So what the costume that we are going to use for the invader is going to be equal to, we are going to use this, and we are going to use this. So we need to multiply the invader type by 2, and then subtract the number 1. And we can switch the costume to the invader type like this. Now I'm just going to remove this so it doesn't enter this block, so that we can see that now if we instantiate all the invaders, the costume is being correctly applied. So if we change this, you see that, yeah, they don't have animation because I just broke this connection. But you see that now we are using the correct invader type, invader costume, according to the type. So now what we need to do is to change the animation, because the animation was defined to be using always the costumes for the invader type number 1. So first, when we do the switch costume 2, we cannot change to the costume number 1, and we won't be always comparing the costume number to the number 2. So what happens here is that the value that we need for this condition, we need to see what value it is for each one of the types. So we know that for invader 1, the costume is number 2. And we know that for invader is always the default costume plus 1, because each animation only has 2 frames. So it starts on 1 and ends in 2, starts on 3 ends in 4, starts in 5 and ends in 6. So now we need a way to get from this value, from the invader type, to the sorry, to the costume that the animation has in the end. And this is pretty simple because each one of the values is basically the double of the invader type. So now we can use that value, the double of the invader type, to compare here. So we'll change the costume. So we'll change the costume back to the original one when the costume number is equal to the invader type times 2. So this is the default one, and here we are making the condition so we come back to the original costume that the invader has. And now we need to change this as well, because right now, every time it reaches the last costume that that invader type can use, we are switching back to the costume number 1. So we also need to change this. And we could copy this because we already know that this is the formula to get the default costume for each invader according to each type. But another thing that we can also do is that, like I was saying, we only have 2 costumes. So when we reach the last one, we just need to come back to the previous one. And so we can do that. So instead of copying this, we can do a more simpler operation, which is costume number minus 1. And so when we are on this invader type, it reaches 2, comes back to 1. In this one reaches 4, comes back to 3. And in this one reaches 6, comes back to 5. And then it just keeps going like this. And now we can test it. And yes, it seems to be working. So we have all the invader types, and they have the correct animation. So, and if we destroy the invaders, that one didn't destroy. We still have some issues with the loader. I'm gonna have to see what's going on, but we can all the invaders, and changing the sprite to the explosion is also working because we didn't change that, and we are doing that here. And it's always the custom number 7, whatever the invader type we are using. And so basically this is what we need to change the invader type, the invader costume according to the invader type. Later we will also use the invader type to define the score that the player earns each time he kills the invader. So according to the original game, the invader type number 1, these 2 in the bottom are worth 10 points. These ones are worth 20 points, and these ones are worth 30 points. And that's something we'll use the invader type as well to change the score that the player is earning every time he kills one of the invaders. And so this is it. I mean, changing the invader type and changing the costumes according to the invader type is just this. So we'll continue on the next video, and probably we'll deal with increasing the speed when the invaders are being killed. In the original game, while you are destroying invaders, the speed increments every time you are destroying the invaders. I mean, you have all the invaders gain more speed when there are few of them left for you to destroy. So we need to change that, and we also need to add the music, because the music, they have like this, where the beat of the music also increases while we are increasing the speed, which is really cool and gives that stressful feeling when you are playing the game. And we're also going to add that. And so this is it. I mean, this is what I had to show you for this video. So I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.